Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm sharing day 4 of the 12 days of Stitchmas. This is a stitching die themed advent calendar with 12 different windows, 12 different stitching dies, and every day for 12 days I am opening up a window and creating a card with that particular die. I have all of the videos in the same playlist, so if you've missed one, you can find it in that playlist or the same playlist that this video is in. So today's die set is a little postage stamp style frame with a tiny ornament that has a hanger as well as a bow. So I do all of my die cutting off screen because that gets a little repetitive and boring. So once everything is die cut, and I die cut the outer postage stamp in gold mirror paper, the inner postage stamp piece is done with fern. My ornament is die cut out of some poppy cardstock, and my bow and ornament hanger are also out of that gold mirror. So I'm using some gold floss to stitch the inner postage stamp piece. This has a very simple line of stitching all around the outside. When I start, I always tape the ends of my floss on the back side of the cardstock with a little piece of Best Ever Craft tape, and then I also finish off the same way so that piece or those floss ends are nice and secured before gluing it onto what I'm gluing it. Now I'm going to be gluing this one onto the postage stamp, the mirror piece that you see at the bottom or in the background of my screen. Typically, I will often die cut the stitching piece twice, or if there's a solid piece, I will die cut the solid piece a second time so that I glue it onto cardstock before putting it onto my card. It just makes it a little bit easier when it comes time to glue it onto my card. It also secures that floss on the inside. When I'm stitching, I'm going up one hole, down the next, up the next, and then back down the previous hole so that I'm filling in all of the stitches at the same time. Another option would be to do a running stitch, which is up one, down the next, up the next, down the next. And then once you've gone all the way around, doing that same thing again, but filling in the open areas. Another option is just to do that running stitch and not fill in the open areas if you want to have like kind of dash stitches all the way around. So you've got a few different options of how to stitch it. Now, the ornament from this set is also stitched. When Spellbinders does stitching dies, they often put little lines or little indents where those stitches are intended to go. So for the ornament, it's kind of a star pattern, and you're always going up the same hole and then you're going down different holes. I typically will go up the center hole and then down different holes. You could also do it the opposite. Go up the outside hole and then down the center hole. It doesn't really matter. The finished result is exactly the same. I'm gluing everything together with Barely Art glue. I have it in a fine line bottle, so it works perfectly for not only gluing my die cuts together, but also gluing my cards together. After gluing them together, I have some sewing clips that I just use to clip the pieces together so they're nice and secure and I can set it aside to dry. My hands are also free to work on the next piece. So the next piece is this ornament here. Once again, I'm going to go up the center hole. I'm going to use a tiny piece of that Best Ever Craft tape to secure the end of that floss. That way I don't have to worry about it coming out on me. Some people use a little loop at the end of their floss and then secure their stitching that way. I've just always done it this way. This is what works for me. Often when I'm die cutting or when I'm stitching a small piece like this, I will hold the piece in my left hand with my thumb and pointer finger, and then I will use my ring and pinky finger to hold that floss just to make sure those stitches are nice and tight. There's nothing worse than doing some stitches and then having some of them loose and it look a little bit sloppy. So by holding it nice and tight, it makes sure that they are nice and neat looking. Once I'm done all of my stitching, and you can see how quickly the stitching goes, it doesn't take a lot of time to do that stitching at all. I will put that Best Ever Craft tape piece on the back to secure it, use my detail scissors just to trim that floss, and then glue this to the solid back. Sometimes dies come with inserts for that stitching, so you have a solid piece and a stitched piece. Sometimes they don't have that, and then I will just cut that stitch piece twice. It doesn't really matter if there's holes in that background part. It just makes it a lot easier when it comes time to assembling the card to be gluing cardstock to cardstock. For my background, while I'm waiting for those pieces to dry, I'm using the ornaments embossing folder. This is just going to give my background some interesting texture. This isn't a step that you necessarily need to do, but I just like what it adds to the card. It makes that background not look quite so stark and quite so plain, but the embossing isn't colored, so it doesn't detract or take away from my stitched piece in any way. I'm using the fern cardstock for the mat here, and I have it trimmed to 4 inches by 5¼ inches. You can see that's the piece that I die cut the postage stamp pieces out of, and then I trim my embossed piece to 3¾ inches by 5 inches and glue it right on top. No one will ever know that there's a piece die cut out of that background there. It's just a way to extend your cardstock, and I especially like doing this with specialty cardstocks. Those can get a little bit pricey, so it's a nice way to just extend it just a little bit. I glue down the postage stamp background piece, and now I'm ready to add my little ornament hanger as well as my ornament and bow. And this background piece has a cheers sentiment pressed right in when it's die cut, so I don't feel there's a need for additional sentiments. You could always stamp or emboss a sentiment on the inside of the card if you wanted to add an additional one, but I really want to keep the focal point on the front of the card, that ornament and that stitched piece there. So for my bow here, these pieces can get a little bit tiny, so I'm using my reverse tweezers to hold them while adding the glue and then pressing them down. You can see that one stuck to my finger and lifted up a little bit, easy enough to move in place, and especially with liquid glue, it makes it really easy to do it. So again, a very, very simple card design, very simple layers, but it just has so much texture and interest to it between the embossed background and the stitching on those die cuts. They just add a really unique feature to it. Thank you so much for joining me for day 4 of the 12 days of Stitchmas. I'll be back again tomorrow for day 5. I hope to see you then.